This is Ryan Brennan, and this is another episode of Lost in the Midlands, and we are back at Celebrate Freedom Foundation, and we're meeting with some of the volunteers out here. I'm real excited to be back, and I want to say thanks to everybody who's sitting down with me today. And this is Bob Day, and he is a volunteer out here, a veteran, and he's done a lot of amazing stuff. So, Bob, if you would, can you walk us through, some of your journey to here, your path, and just a little bit about what you've done?
Well, thank you very much. Well, basically, I started out, my journey started at Route Box 118, Colonial Heights, Virginia. That's where I grew up in that setting, and always liked to involve myself with tinkering and doing things of that nature. And my grandfather, of course, was involved with topiary. He had about 15 different animals in the driveways that were made of hedges, boxwood. So it gave me an idea about, how one can be creative with design.
Yeah.
And then I volunteered for the military and sent to Fort Benning, Georgia. During that time, start understanding the value of leadership. Because if you would think that I grew up with my grandfather, and most of the time I spent several years just living alone.
Wow.
When he passed away. But during that time, I understood the value of having a village. The people around the community. And so we went into the military, and I started to go into, I was with a logistics company, and was sent to Okinawa. I stayed in Okinawa for 18 months. And coming back, I came back, and I met a lot of good fellows that were from the deep south. And I told the transfer agent, I said, I want you to send me as far south as you can get. Because I realized from where I grew up, the people that I met wanted something out of life. And those were a lot of guys from the south. They wanted a better life for themselves. So I came Fort Jackson. That's what brought me here to South Carolina. And I was working with a fellow named Mark Hart. He was one of the major African American electricians in the area, that company. And I asked him, I said, Mark, what should I go into, business management or industrial management? He said industrial management. So that's when I went. So went into industrial management, and I got a job with Rockwell International. Make a long story short, of course, I went on, got a 4-year education, and I worked with multiple companies over the years through buyouts. But fortunately, I never had to relocate in all those years. And I worked with, I retired a few years ago after 36 years in manufacturing.
Congratulations.
And 36 years in manufacturing as an engineering services manager.
Wow.
So we were involved with putting in, not only running our CAD community, CAD systems, but also dealing with concept designs and procedures. So we did a lot of that during the course of these years. And some of my volunteer activities, I worked with the Eau Claire Community Council. That's one of the things that kind of got me started, because I wanted to give back.
Yeah.
And how I got involved with Celebrate Freedom, I'm jumping a little bit, but we'll talk, because I'm looking give me a concept of my journey.
Yeah.
And how I got involved with Celebrate Freedom Foundation. Unfortunately, we had a house fire, okay, some years ago. And here with me, now I had nothing to do, no yard work or nothing because I was living in an apartment. So we're at Fort Jackson with a group of guys that I retired with in the military. And here comes somebody I was in the military with, Jack Lovely. They had a parade out there, and they stopped by where we were and said, hey, listen, we got this organization. So that was a few years ago, and I've had over, I would say about 16 years of service with Celebrate Freedom thereafter.
Wow.
Because of the fact, the concept and things that they were doing for veterans, trying to instill a better life for children,
yeah,
was something that was dear to my heart. So we started there, and we talked about developing a learning program, STEM learning program. So we kicked that around a lot. And the other thing that I really liked is they had 5 Cobra helicopters here in various. That was hey, how can you? Where can you ever get close-up view the internal structure of a Cobra helicopter? And that was one of the things that I felt that was very meaningful to me. And so we went out and started working. Then we have our SOAR program, and started working with that. And pulling in, had a helicopter. We pulled from school to school, and we had at that time we were starting out. Had trouble with always trying to find a truck to pull the helicopter. No, well, actually the trailer, not to pull the helicopter, the trailer. So I said, well, I have a pickup. We'll use my pickup because the concept pickup is no good sitting at home or whatever because of what we were trying to achieve doing a SOAR mission outweighs any wear and tear on a designated truck.
Yeah.
So we did it, and then as we grew, we came with the better network and so forth. So that's how, in a nutshell, that we started with this. The backdrop of some of the things that I'm doing with Celebrate Freedom now at this point. I guess we can start with Buffalo Soldiers.
Yeah.
We're going to have them to come down and that's set up a process to really display their horsemanship plus their historical knowledge of the Buffalo Soldiers. So we go up and down, and we had a meeting with the general out at Fort Jackson, and he said, well, we have to have corrals set up for them. We have to have shots for these horses. I'm thinking, I did a little research and realized that the Buffalo Soldiers only had hand-me-downs. They had nags as far as horses, and here you wanted these horses to have all kinds of shots, cargo shots, and things with nature. And when I said that, the entire about 60, 70 people, all of them was up there in laughter. And I was sure, you told me to tell them guys that they had all these shots with these horses.
Let me stop you real quick. Can you tell us what is the Buffalo Soldiers organization? So,
okay. The Buffalo Soldiers started out in 1866. And it's been known that it said a couple of things, that the Buffalo Soldiers got the name from the Native Americans that saw that one, they said, well, maybe because of the curly hair was written of the buffalo. Then another story and stated that because they realized how they fought on the plains with the Buffalo Soldiers, that they were fierce fighters.
Yeah.
And And so they have those names. So that's two basic scenarios. But the Buffalo Soldiers actually were involved with major conflicts with a number of the various tribes of the Cheyenne, Utes, Sioux, and so on during that time. But they also were guard some of the wagon trains that were being resettlement out further west. They guard those. And they protected them against carpetbaggers, people trying to involve them in things of this nature. But they were actually went through various world wars, and in 1944, the 10th was dissolved. But of course, in 1948, that's when the president started to integrate the military, because they were a segregated military on the forward. So that's how it evolved. And in 1958, of course, the 10th was reactivated again, and they kind of morphed into some of the other militaries, because they were involved with the Vietnam War and doing things in their morph state. So that's how that happened. We were having our 154th reunion here in Columbia, South Carolina.
Wow.
And this was actually we got about 2 weeks away, maybe 2 weeks away. This should have been the start of that reunion, but we had to postpone it until next year. And to make a long story short, with the Buffalo Soldiers, the mayor Benjamin, when we talked to him about this last year, he indicated that it would be very nice if you could find a local participant in the Buffalo Soldiers. There again, another one of these questions of what in the world. But however, a neighbor and I had been talking years before about there was a possibility of one that was buried not a mile from where I lived in Columbia at that time. So when that came up, we went out there. Sure enough, there it was. He was in Troop K, or 10th Horse Capital. Did a lot of, and I'm not going to give away a whole lot of it because there would be more coming, but I've already contacted his family. He had owned property on the University of South Carolina. He was very prominent in the area. So that's, one of the things that is claiming fame there. And we also, as part of the Celebrate Freedom Foundation, we work with STEM outreach, as I mentioned, at elementary schools. And part of that is because I'm a proponent of technical education, realizing that one of the things that we have readily available are our hands.
Yeah.
To be able to work with them in thought processes that we can garner from them. And there was a lot of schools in the area that when we started going out, I realized that a lot of places they were very underserved. Kids were emotional. They needed help. And these are things that, by me starting out at Route 1, Box 118, Colonial Heights, Virginia, kind of like in the county, and going the things that I had to do to get to where I was. And I'm not going to get into all of it but sometimes it's not where you come from, it's where you're going. If you have a clear vision of what you want to do, there's someone once said, you become what you think about. You become what you think about. You think about being someone or somebody or having skills that you haven't had before, you can achieve those. And those are the things that got me there. So we started in one situation, because I've encountered so many with these children that we've dealt with. We were in a school in upstate. One morning early, we're waiting on Annie. I think we to come in Annie's helicopter. No,
Yeah.
Maggie was coming in. Maggie was flying in, and we're waiting on it. And I was talking with these kids early morning, and this particular school was a new school, had all the bricks and mortar that you could look at, but the community was a depressed textile community.
Mm.
Knowing that all those businesses are now closed and now overseas, and the kids were standing there talking. And I started talking to them about the importance of education. That you can, if you apply yourself, that you can be able to go further than you go, further than you can ever believe. Well, I talked with them, and then I realized, turn around, and if you see me tear up a little bit, they were crying. And I noticed, I said, wait a minute. First I thought, you know how it is with students, I said, first, being a military guy, did I curse at them or something? And didn't realize it because I was, and I was concerned about that.
Yeah.
I said, oh, gee. I said, what did I say? The girl said, tears rolling down, she said, gave me a hope. Wow. Knowing that they could eventually either make that community better or they can move someplace else by the skills that they achieve right there in the school. Isn't that something? So that's part of it. But as far as dealing with the STEM portion, what really, another thing I came up with what is called the faith-based workforce development program.
Yeah.
Now that faith-based work development program was offshoot of my involvement with the STEM outreach program that we had, because what I found in our situation that we had students that really wanted to be engaged, and we didn't have those students that always stood in the back and didn't do anything.
Yeah.
There's walking around, and I said, how can I reach those? You know, we've tried concepts where we started out getting in the front, and then we turned the class around so the ones in the back would be in the front. You know, all kinds of things. But then, you know, sometimes you got to listen to that birdie on the shoulder. You know, I could go in further about that birdie, what the birdie really is, and what it means. And it told me, it said, listen, faith-based children, they're centered, some of them. You know, they have a direction. Now, and not getting too biblical, but sometimes in reference to what we have, you know, there are disciples that become out of it. So I converted and thought that perhaps they can be disciples unknowingly. We would have our class size 15, you know, per period, semester. And the goal here is we'll train them on leadership, group interaction, thought through processes, to be able to understand how to evolve as leaders and so forth. But then the goal was to be able to go back to school, they didn't know this, and talk to and be involved in helicopters, understand about the engines, and go back to school, and then tell their friends. And hopefully some of those friends that they talk to are those that stood in the back. They change their direction, knowing that there is a hope for a future. Okay?
Bob, you've done a lot of amazing stuff. It sounds like this STEM education outreach is reaching a lot of kids and giving them hope.
Yes.
You know, it's powerful. I appreciate your service and your journey. It's truly amazing. Stuff you are doing here to celebrate freedom. It's awesome. Is there any last message you would like to convey to the audience? You know, maybe a child that's thinking about, or a student that's thinking about potentially getting involved in STEM education. How can they do that?
Well, basically, there are a lot of activities, and and I understand that some folks may not be able to uh, go to a 4-year college. It's in a 4-year college for various reasons. But by all means, try the technical college route.
Yeah.
But from a certificate program, get a joining apprentice program, because at one time, that the CEO of BMW up there in Spartanburg, over in Germany, of course, Germany is heavy in the apprentice program. That CEO was in the apprentice program in Germany.
Wow.
So, because it doesn't have the bells and whistles like you would hear people talk about, start there. But also, be involved, ask questions, see people in your church that are working in the industry, that are doing things. Ask them, because that's the village concept that I talked about before. And ask them. You start simple. Don't make it difficult. Because if you don't make it difficult, and you look back over your life, you find that the road was not hard as you thought it was when you began. Thank you for having me here, and if there's anybody that needs some assistance or help, that's what we're here for. It's not about us. It's about you, your audience, and this community.
Thank you, Bob.